In the summer of 1999, when I was around 12 years old, my grandfather was arrested for 4 different counts of murder and sentenced to death before I finished middle school. I was with him when the cuffs went on. We were coming back from a camping trip in the pine woods near his house when red and blue lights shot through the trees and veiled his wrinkled skin. I remember seeing sweat running down his face, and I still think of him when I feel it trickling down my nose. He didn't hesitate or even act surprised as we made it to the back gate of his yard. He only squeezed my hand and told me, "I love you, Sonny." To the shock of the whole neighborhood and everyone in my immediate family, the police had received an anonymous tip of suspicious activity coming from my grandfather's home. It was a steady stream of odd observances from over the years that gave them probable cause. He was seen digging at odd hours of the morning. Strange figures were entering his home in the evening but never leaving. What I think did him in was the local sheriff. Sheriff Locke always had it out for my grandfather. He was always driving by the house, even on holidays, and he never smiled once at my family or me. Friends at school told me he was some true crime nut and that he was writing a book on a serial killer from the 70s. Through his in-depth studies, he convinced himself that the killer, the headhunter, was my Papa Joe. He was a better detective than I'd given him credit for. When he was arrested, I never got to see what they found in his shed or buried in the backyard, not in person at least. The cops, having some common decency, tried to spare my eyes from the sight, committing me to the arms of my weeping mother. I remember my father shouting that this was impossible. It had to be a misunderstanding. It had to be. Papa was a deacon at our church and even worked as a magician for birthday parties in the area. There was no way such a sweet man could ever be a killer in disguise. The news report and the photos shown to my parents the evening after his apprehension were enough to make them change our last name and flee the state. I figured out the details of what was in that yard over the years of hushed tones and quiet internet searches. Reading what he did and how he did it, it was hard for me not to hate my grandfather. For the better part of 10 years, I did my best to keep him out of my mind and ignore any mention of him in family correspondence. We never brought him up at family dinners or holidays. We weren't a reunion family, and there wasn't a large enough group to meet up with in any meaningful way, so life went on as it does. I graduated from college, got a technical degree, and met the love of my life, Lacey. Lacey and I were only dating for 3 months when I popped the question. I know, it's an odd thing to do that early into dating someone, but I loved her. It felt right. Hell, it almost felt expected by month 2, and she said yes without hesitation. Apparently, she already had an online board she'd pinned a ton of wedding ideas to during our freshman year at college, so what was the point in waiting? I was the happiest I'd ever been for the 2 weeks we were engaged before it happened. Lacey was cooking that evening, making something with greens, I can't remember, when I got a call. Before I could respond, a deadpan voice said, "Collect call from XXXXXX Penitentiary. Do you accept the charges?" My heart dropped as I heard that name. I knew what it was before she even finished. He'd found me. I swear I wanted to hang up. I wanted to throw my phone into the wall and disappear all over again. But I couldn't. I felt ridiculous. It had been 10 years and he was locked behind bars at a state facility. I had power over him, power to make him disappear from mine and Lacey's life with a clean slate. I'd never be connected to his name or deeds again if I just put down the phone. But I couldn't. "Yes," I said, "I accept." There was a dull buzz and feedback before a light voice crackled to life from the other end of the line. "Sonny?" my grandfather said. "You there?" "Yeah," I said. I somehow wanted to be both mute and loudly vulgar at the same time. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. How'd you get this number? How'd you find me? I don't really have time. Make time. He cleared his throat and half-heartedly said, "Your mother." That was enough. "Great," I said. "She's giving out my number." "Just to me, Frank. And after I begged." "Cool. Well, you found me. What do you want?" "I want you to come see me." I gave a bitter laugh. "Please, champ. I need to see you." I felt bile rising in my throat, burning as I hissed. "What for? What on earth could you possibly need to see me for?" There was a pause before his voice crackled. "Because I need to tell you why I did it. I need you to know, and only you." I almost hung up, but something inside me wouldn't allow it. I was choking up. This was a nightmare, and it was bubbling to the surface faster than I could process. He wanted to tell me. What the fuck? He'd gone 10 years without talking to the cops about motive, process, or anything when it came to his victims. He was an indiscriminate killer masquerading as a family man. This was a ruse. It was some kind of ploy to exert power over me. That's how his kind worked. I knew all of this, but I couldn't act as I did. Somewhere, deep under the hatred and spite, a part of me still wanted my grandfather. I hated him for that. "Why now?" I said. "Why now, after all this time?" "My date is coming up soon, sport," he said, "and what I need to say is too important to follow me to the grave." "Then tell the cops." "They wouldn't believe me," he said, "and if they did, there's no telling if they're infiltrated." "The hell does that mean?" I heard a voice on the other end tell my grandfather to hurry up. "I've got to go. Please, Frankie," he said. "Please come see me, and I promise it'll be the last time. What I need to tell you is best done face to face." The line went dead after that. I was left standing by the wall receiver. The cord was wrapped so tightly around my finger that it was starting to turn purple. I always fidgeted like that when I felt like I was in trouble. My mother couldn't beat the habit out of me, and Lacey hadn't really noticed it. "Who was that, honey?" I heard her ask from the other room. I finally released the cord from my blue finger. I'd never told her about Grandpa. "No one," I said, "just some telemarketer." I never told Lacey where I was going, only that I needed to visit a sick relative on my mother's behalf. Not the best lie, but it worked for the most part. Lacey saw me off with a kiss and told me to drive safely, and I told her I would. That was a lie in its own right, as I nearly had a panic attack and swerved into a semi an hour in. The closer I got to the prison, the more I shook. I was hyperventilating by the time I pulled into the parking lot, and had it not been for a rosary my mother made me hang in my car window, I probably would have got worse. I'm not that religious, and I'm definitely not Catholic like the rest of my family, but the repetition, pace, and memories I associated with reciting the prayers helped me in some small way. I ended up placing the rosary in my pocket before going in, and thankfully it wasn't confiscated by security. Apparently, my grandfather, despite being on death row, was allowed some small aspect of freedom. He was on good behavior, somehow, and apparently even ministered to his fellow inmates, at least according to the guard who escorted me to the conference cell. He was able to convince a lot of people that he was a safe man to be around and one who needed little attention for correction. He worked his best to make it easy to forget about the bodies. I was led into a large center block room with 2 metal chairs and a steel table. There was a guard at the corner of the white room and a strong scent of floor cleaner. It gave off the same sterile, bleak vibe of a hospital hallway. Too clean, too unassuming. I took my seat and waited, anxiously bouncing my knee as every second passed. I didn't even have my phone on me to check the time. I was halfway through digging a hole in the pocket of my cardigan when the buzz came. The guard at the corner of the room cleared the door, and the sound of clinking metal became audible. There was a polite exchange of "pardon me" and "thank you" as the man I once knew as my loving grandfather entered the room, smiling. His head was bald and shone with the same sterile gleam of the humming ceiling lights. He was clean-shaven and nearly hairless, save for his eyebrows, and his teeth were yellow with age. He bared them in a small smile that I did not return. That didn't diminish his resolve as he was led by the arm to his chair. His hand and leg cuffs jangled like the bells he'd ring for Christmas to raise money for charity, back when I still believed he had good in him. At that moment, even with the sight of his orange jumpsuit burning my eyes, I still wished that was the man I saw now. The guard sat him down, connected his cuffs to a hook on the table, and then joined the other guard at the opposite corner of the room. My grandfather looked at me, smiling and quaint, as I stared at him loathingly. Any uneasiness in my heart was gone, as fear gave way to contempt. I was filled with nothing less than loathing for him and the mask he wore. "You've grown, Sonny," he said with a small laugh. "Yep." He clenched his fists as if testing to make sure the joints still worked. Then finally he said, "Thank you for coming, Frankie." "Just Frank," I told him. "Only that." "Right, of course. I'm sorry. I know it's been too long." "What's this about? Why the hell did you want to see me?" "You're my grandkid." "No, Frank McClatchy was your grandkid. I have a new last name because Googling that alone shows a crime scene photo of your backyard." "Blood is blood, Frank." "I agree," I told him, heat filling my throat and chest. "It makes sense. Blood is blood, just like the people you murdered who had those same relations, right? Moms, dads, brothers and sisters? That shit didn't stop you from—" "Frank," he said in a low, stern voice I hadn't heard since childhood. There was no smile on his face now, just a perpetual frown of sad regret. "Please, you came all this way and have done so much more than I'd expect you to, but I need you to listen. Please, Frank, His hands began to tremble as he looked skyward with dull eyes. "Frank, I'm scheduled for this evening." I felt my stomach drop, but didn't understand why. I thought I'd be happy to hear that, but instead I was dumbstruck. Some part of me still mourned the man I once knew, and I had no good way to hide it. "This afternoon?" I said, half a question, half a statement. "It's been in the works a long time, Sonny," he said. "I told you it was almost here." "But I didn't know you meant—" I stopped myself and breathed. "What time?" He leaned back in his chair as far as the cuffs would let him and sighed. "My date with the chair is 6 today. It was 4:15 when I came in. Last meal is right after this. I get to have prime rib, mashed potatoes, and my favorite wine. Do you like Chianti? It's excellent stuff. I had it once with your grandmother when we were in—" "Wait, stop, just stop." I couldn't even find the words. "What the hell are you even saying right now?" "Language, Frank." "Are you kidding me?" "Listen, Frank." "No, you listen." I leaned in close to the table and whispered at the loudest possible volume. "It's been a decade since I saw you last, and longer since you were a meaningful part of my life. Do you know what it's like to have your father sit you down at the age of 12 and repeat your new last name to you over and over again until you're scared to even think of your old one? When most kids turn 16, they get a car and a girlfriend. Instead of that, I got the nerve to search up your crime scene photos, see exactly what you did." He stopped trying to defend himself and looked at me with an unnatural pity. "I mean, killing people? Chopping them up? What sick bastard burns his victims with acid? Can you tell me that? How can a man go from picking up his grandkid from youth group and then take him for ice cream when he knows there are bodies in his backyard? Can you tell me that?" My grandfather sat in silence for a long while before he finally received a tap on the shoulder from one of the guards. 15 minutes, we were told. In 15 minutes, I'd never see my grandfather again.
and I could live my life away from him and his sins. Yet a part of me still ached. I hadn't even realized I started crying. He reached for my hand, and I didn't have the strength to pull it away. "Do you remember that night when they took me away?" I didn't respond, but he didn't wait for me to continue. "We'd just finished camping down by the creek, and I told you that something bad was coming. You'd caught 2 fish and cried when one of them died. I told you it would be all right, and we buried it in the soil of the riverbank. From earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust." "I haven't been to church in a long time, Grandpa." I was shocked that I called him that. He laughed. "Funny enough, neither have I. Just the same, I read my scriptures every day and pray the rosary." "Good for you." He looked off into nothing, as if projecting a memory in his mind like a film. "I believe in demons, Frank, even if you don't. I've seen things in this life that don't make sense on this side of eternity, and that still haunt me when I close my eyes." He looked at me and smiled. "I'm not afraid to die if it means I get to forget about those things. I want to, but I also need you to understand that I don't regret what I did." My blood ran cold. "Frank," he said, "I know how that must sound, and there's no way I have the time to tell you everything you need to know, but I need you to stay until after the execution." "No," I said, "there's no way." "Frank," he almost pleaded with me now, "for the love of God, I need you to stay. I need you to know. Someone has to know, and you're the only person I trust." "Trust with what? You've had 10 years to come clean." He paused and then asked, "Did you ever wonder why I salted them?" I moved my mouth but couldn't make a word. "Did it ever strike you as odd that they could never identify the bodies?"
I dissolved them with acid, yes, but beyond recognition, not an ounce of DNA remained, not a tooth matched a dental record. If you need to hear me say all of the gritty details so you can know without a doubt it was me who did it, then I'll say it all. I cut off their heads with an axe and buried them upside down. I burned their bodies and faces with sulfuric acid, and I kept them buried inside contractor bags filled with the stuff. I did it 4 times over, and I'd do it 100 times again given the choice. His voice lowered, and the anger in his face had given way to fear. It had to be done. I mustered a hoarse voice and asked, "Why?" He twisted his chains around his fingers in that same tense way that I fidgeted. I was near the point of passing out as he said, "To keep them from growing back." I didn't have the chance to say anything else as a guard walked over and announced his time was up. "Wait!" I stood up and tried to talk the guards into a few more moments with him. "Please, Joe, wait! What does that mean? What the hell does that mean?" They led him away, and as he passed, he said something, half to himself and half to me. "Do not believe every spirit," he said, "but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world." He was silenced with the slam and lock of a door, and I was led out into the main reception room. They asked me if I wanted to check out, and told me I could have no more visiting time with him. I wanted to leave, take my things and drive in silence the entire ride home, but I stood at the front desk and shook. For whatever reason, I asked to stay for the execution. They had me sign a few papers and asked me what my relationship to him was. My hand trembled as I wrote down grandson. As I sit and wait to be led back to the room where I'll watch my grandpa die, I'm typing this out. I keep repeating his words in my head. To keep them from growing back. What the hell does that mean? I'll update when I'm able.